Is conscious leadership also applies through your whole life, and especially when you run your own business. And sometimes, honestly, the conversations people need to be having, it's whatever they're avoiding. But I would just also put in the pot that if there's any conversation that you should be having with your mother, your husband, your son, your sister, your best friend that you're not having, it will be impacting your work.
Rachel, I just want to say thank you for spending a little time with me today. I'm really excited to learn from you and possibly learn how to slow down, zen out a bit. If you wouldn't mind, as we kind of kick things off and getting to know you a bit, you came from an editorial and writing background before you moved into coaching. So maybe share with us, how did that transition happen, and what did that career teach you about the way that people tell stories to themselves that you now use in your coaching work?
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Really happy to be here. And yeah, I've had a journey where I really wanted to be a writer. It wasn't like my dream growing up, but in college got really clear about it, and then went to grad school and got an MFA in nonfiction writing and started working for magazines. I also did some radio reporting. So my first half of my grown-up career, I would say I was in magazines, especially. And I was an editor at a magazine called Backpacker here in Colorado that's all about wilderness travel. And then I left that to be the editor of a business magazine called Conscious Company that was all about redefining success in business. And that was a big pivotal moment for me, because there I got to interview all kinds of really, really like mission-driven, meaning-driven leaders who were starting very cool companies, some of them huge, like Organic Valley, and, we would cover Patagonia and Asana, the task management, company culture, but also a lot of it was about the inner game of leadership and about really creating meaning in your life and taking responsibility. We also had a lot of the people writing for me were very high level, cool coaches and consultants. And so I started getting exposed to the ideas that they were talking about. And over the course of that time, being in that role and just how my life was evolving, it ended up redefining success in business for me. And there came a point, this was in 2018, so a while ago now, where I was working for that magazine. I basically was responsible for all the words. I was the whole editorial department. It was really cool. Like, it was fun. It was good people. It was good stuff. And I could just really feel that my heart wasn't fully in it anymore. And I was getting divorced that year. And just like life was kind of calling me on an adventure. And I was getting support from a very skillful, amazing coach who I could maybe say more about later. But she gave me this question that I've been trying to answer in a lot of ways ever since, which is, how do I give my gifts in a way that fulfills me? And so, I just started to really watch myself and listen and feel. And I saw that even though objectively this job was very cool and had a lot going for it, and and I liked the people and I liked what I was up to, my heart just stopped being in it anymore. And that wasn't something I could control exactly.
Right.
Like, the heart does what the heart does. And so I eventually brought that issue to the woman who was running the magazine and, basically brought it as a question. Like, hey, my heart isn't in this anymore. I think it's time for me to move on. I want to go off and I don't even know what exactly, but have an adventure. And, a huge part of the product is depending on me. I'm not going to, I love you. I'm not going to leave you. How can we do this? And she came back and said, go, let's finish the next couple issues, but way shorter timeline than I would have guessed. It was a few months, but I thought it might take 6 months to replace me. And she was like, no, finish the things we're in the middle of and then go. And so I finished at that job. And the next day I went on a vision quest. It was like a 12-day thing in the desert in Utah with a school. And I spent the next year or more wandering and in a really deep walkabout, you could call it, and ended up moving back to Boulder, where I've been living for a while, right before the pandemic. And as that hit, it just so happened that I discovered this marketing framework called StoryBrand, which is how we know each other. And I also just had this really deep felt sense of oh my gosh, this is so fun. It brought me alive in this really cool way. And it was this exact missing piece that I needed to take my writing talent and skills and make it more relevant as a business thing and in marketing. And so I I took a leap then too. I sort of followed the amount of bliss that I was getting in learning this framework. And there's a whole story of like, it was very lucky that I ended up running into it, but I decided to follow that and take a big leap. So I started I got certified as a story brand guide and started a copywriting business and did that for about 4 years. And it was great. It was super fun. And I loved writing. I would write websites for people, a lot of service providers. That was my main thing, emails too. And I loved it. But then I also like was really feeling, again, there came a moment where I just felt my heart tugging me somewhere else. And that was towards finally taking all the things I've been doing for fun for the previous decade, self-development workshops and meditation retreats and medicine journeys and authentic relating practice. And I mean, I could go on. It was a lot. It was like, people were often surprised when they met me that I wasn't already a coach or a therapist. But I finally just was like, okay, it is time. I have deepened in this enough. It is clear enough. It's the thing I'm doing for fun. And one of the clues to finding your genius is what would you do if no one was paying you? Well, I was doing this when no one was paying me. And so I finally, it was a little bit of a bumpy road, but I finally got clear that like my heart was calling me towards coaching. And so it's been about a year that's been the main thing that I've been selling and offering and pouring my heart into. And it's really, really fun to feel so aligned in what I'm doing. I will pause there. I'm aware I didn't answer the second half of your question, but that was a pretty long answer.
I love it. I love learning about my guests, and I know that anybody listening will absolutely appreciate it. So then tell me, you go down this journey. So then now that you've been coaching people for a few years, what are some of the stories that we are telling ourselves that you now use in your coaching work? Like when you work with high performers, high achievers, what are some of those common stories you hear over and over again?
We are all, human brains we are story making machines. The one way you can get anyone to sit still and pay attention for 2 hours straight without moving is put them in front of a good story, right? That's like what every movie we've ever watched is. And we were using the power of story for marketing and story brand. And now I definitely use it, getting conscious of it, to help us transform our lives. So there's a lot of really common stories. One I was literally just working with a client on an hour ago was, I can't trust myself, was a story that we uncovered that was just in there. There's a right way to do things is another one. And I need to find it. Other high performer stories that I just want to say, we never get rid of the stories we're telling ourselves. There's just the possibility to choose ones that are more powerful and more adaptive to the current situation and create more joy and meaning and aliveness and alignment in life. Or a lot of us are carrying around unconscious stories that come from our childhood experiences. And so some of those can be like, I'm only worthy when I'm doing things. Stuff like that. I can keep going.
That sounds very familiar to me. You said something earlier that is a beautiful question that someone you had worked with said, how do I give my gifts in a way that fulfills me? As you're working through this year-long journey of yours, going from editing and writing and using the story brand framework, how do you then find this new gift in using body and mind work and all of this stuff to coaching high achieving professionals?
How do I know what my gifts are is a really powerful, potent question. And in a way that fulfills me, it's a listening practice. It's allowing yourself, there is a certain amount of experimentation and trying things, but it's really like looking and allowing yourself to notice and count and like let matter the things that feel really good, the things that you feel more energized when you finish them than when you started, the things that, like I said, you could do all day and for fun, and that there's no sense of obligation when you're doing it. There's a sense of, sometimes it can be hard to recognize your gifts because they come so naturally to you that you don't even realize that it's something that others would find hard. It's like a fish being like, oh, wait, swimming water, that's meaningful. And so, there's ways you can look back at peak meaningful moments in your life, times you felt really great or really like alive and on fire, or that you really made a difference for somebody. That's a way to do it. You can ask other people, like, what walks in the room when I do? What do you think of me for? But for me, it's been very, very much just a practice of letting myself notice and then pay and then really like let it matter, the things that bring me aliveness and joy and do feel fulfilling, and trusting that the passion that is there is an expression of something deeply in me. And also, you know, I've, this is sort of a funny example, but I had this dentist once who was like such a nerd about dentist stuff. And I was like, heck yeah, I want my dentist to be passionate and nerdy about the dentist thing. I can't imagine being passionate and nerdy about that, but like, this is the kind of dentist I want, right? And that's true for any profession. Like your pure passion for it is likely to make you, to motivate you in ways that just pure obligation or a decision may not.
What walks in the room when I do? Holy cow, what a visual, right? It's very easy for us to kind of imagine or even ask our friends that question to help us self-discover. Now, help me understand, you work with self-employed individuals who are, again, running their own businesses. Are most of them in that sphere of fulfilling their gifts, or are they just kind of running a business that at one point in their life served them, but maybe now they're feeling burnt out and they're looking for a way to really just lean into those gifts that light them up?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of some of each. Like some people find me when things are like, the business is okay, but they really have a sense that it's not the thing bringing them alive anymore, and they want and maybe they even have a clue of the thing they want to follow, but there's something that's scaring them or holding them back. I mean, this is a big part of it, is like, it's one thing to know, to get that little spark, but they're like quiet, and it's scary to follow them. There's a lot of good reasons we had been rewarded for not following them. So some people come to me to help find that. I do have other people who are like pretty on track to what the thing is. And then as they start to pursue it, then they get to run into all the obstacles, all the fear, all the voices of, it's often things we've internalized from the people around us, or they realize there's some really big, significant relationship in their life that it feels like is kind of in tension with where they're wanting to go. And so it's like, how can I go this direction I want to with this other thing that's dragging me around? Do I need to leave? I've definitely had a few people in the question of if their marriage can come with them where they're going. And often the answer, like I don't come in with an opinion on that, but we often find that as they learn to show up differently, that very surprising things evolve. And in fact, the answer can be yes. So
when individuals work with you, how do you help leaders change the stories that they keep telling themselves? Because changing the mind, I imagine, would be very difficult. I imagine some of that cranial sacral work comes in, but yeah, maybe give us a little more on how do you help us change the paradigm, I guess.
Part of it is seeing the invisible web, or like the current under the surface, because it's with awareness comes choice. And when we're moving unconsciously, when a story is running us, but we don't even realize it, then it's just a pattern and a habit.
Wow.
So part of it is really like actually slowing down and taking a look, like, okay, you are for some reason having a block around sending these invoices that would help. Like what comes up when you think about doing it? And we look at that both, what is the story in the mind, and also what is the experience in the body. And so that's part of it, is that sometimes there's, emotions show themselves in the body, and thoughts create emotions, and emotions can create thoughts. There's a loop that happens. And so we'll look at it from both angles, is like, is there something you need to feel here? Often it's related to an experience from long ago of, a childhood pain. And anyone who hangs out with kids knows that a child can have massive pain from like pretty small content, right? It's like the pain of the misunderstanding stories we started to tell based on what teachers said that we didn't quite get, or, a well-intentioned relative making a comment about how we look, but we took it in as something was wrong with us. Sometimes just seeing a story is enough to have it released, just like really spotting it. And other times we do the work of creating new beliefs and really like choosing them intentionally and finding evidence for them and changing our mind with our will and our conscious effort. And then when that, and then also being with whatever's in the body that needs care and attention and seeing and having its story heard and understood and differentiating the past and the present, being able to see how, oh, right. My like survival brain is confusing the thing that happened when I was a kid with the situation now. Can I give that the attention it never got? Let the feelings complete through my body and now have more possibility.
Wow. Are there like signals from the body that you see sort of flare up within individuals? Maybe that's a consistent habit for those individuals that are maybe in hustle culture, or they're stressed out from running the business. Maybe they're misaligned with the business they're running. Obviously there's going to be stress and burnout, but are there any other signals that if I'm listening and I'm wondering if I'm in this state, what should I be looking for? I mean, am I experiencing headaches? Am I like kind of what's going on with my body that maybe I'm not paying attention to that is signaling me that something is off?
Yeah. So if you're up for it, that feels like a good way to answer that question would be to give a little like teaching about the nervous system. That's probably a couple clicks more true and sophisticated than most of us pop culturally understand. Because basically, yes, the symptoms of stress, right? And so most of us think of the nervous system as it's the system in the body that helps us, brings information in and it helps us move. And it's got some states of healthy function and then some states of stress. And most of us have heard of the idea of like fight or flight. That is the stress state of what we call the sympathetic nervous system. And then we've also probably heard about rest and digest, which is the healthy functioning state of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the healthy state we could also call the window of presence. When we're in the healthy state, we're sort of just moving up and down within this window of being able to be really present. We're not in a state of fear or threat. And so rest and digest is that present state of the parasympathetic nervous system, but there's also a present state of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is the one that gets us moving. And that one can look like just being in action, like a healthy tone towards movement and available to move. And then there's a stress state where we pop out the window, and that's the fight or flight. If we get sympathetically triggered out the window, but sort of a more primitive version of the nervous system, the parasympathetic. Reptiles and even like amoebas have a parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is a little bit more complex evolutionarily and historically we look at other animals, but that can get stressed too. And that looks like coming out the bottom of the window, and it can look like collapse of some kind. I mean, in the most physical sense, it's like shock and sleepiness. But so symptoms that you are out of the window of presence, essentially. Because operating from the window of presence, there's a lot more room for flow and creativity and joy and really listening to the subtle signals of you co-collaborating with life. That all happens in the window of presence. Most of us spend a lot of our time out the window one direction or another. We're either numb, collapsed, disassociated out the bottom. So a lot of avoiding behavior or like really getting sleepy or feeling very confused, that can be coming out the bottom. And this is like in any given moment. And then coming out the top are all the signals of your parasympathetic nervous system never actually getting to relax out of its threat state. And so that can be, it can look like all sorts of things. Headaches, stress, trouble sleeping, digestive issues, holding your breath a lot, just a sense of like never getting to relax. It's actually shocking how many different like health problems can be pointed straight back to the nervous system. That's part of why craniosacral is really powerful, and it's part of why coaching can be really powerful. But so understanding how to get out of either of those states of threat, which it can be, the mind can help, but it really is a body experience. So the state of threat, there's can be physical symptoms, but there's also just the experience of like looking at your calendar and going, like or just feeling dread on Sunday night. I mean, these take on very, very physical experiences, but they can also take on a little bit more like mindy, symbolic, metaphorical experiences, having trouble slowing down, having trouble putting work away, having trouble just sitting still.
Well, I want to pivot just a minute here, because as you have been, working with individuals running their own business, I've heard you say that building a business is the ultimate form of personal development. I have to agree there. And that no one really trains you for what you call the inside job. So do you mind kind of sharing with us, what does the inside job actually mean in simple terms for a leader who's listening?
Yes, it is the absolute, you'll really get to meet everything that scares you about approval and control and security, about being seen. So to me, the inside job is less like what is happening, like what am I doing? How am I marketing? What does my P&L look like? All that stuff. And more about how am I being with the stuff? What is my state of mind? What are the thoughts I'm having? What am I believing? What is my state of body as I think about my marketing plan? And can I be aware of the state of being that I am coming from? Am I in that window of presence where creativity gets to happen, or am I out of it somewhere? Most of us are out of it most of the time. Am I in there? Am I coming to my marketing from a sense of creativity and joyfulness and a desire to serve? Or is it this feeling of like, I have to get it right and I'm supposed to do it this way? And the things we produce from the state of fear are very different than the things we can produce from the state of creativity. And so the inside job to me, fundamentally, is meeting ourselves in the ways we need to so that we can relax, be less scared. Most of us are secretly terrified all the time.
Yes.
We're like in some kind of survival mode. And so how can we meet that fear with kindness, with clarity, with skill, both in the body and in how we're thinking, and then learn to choose the thoughts and the beliefs to operate more from a sense of trust and presence. And when we do that, our deepest wisdom gets to come forth, and all the things we know and all the ways that our heart is in it and that we were here to serve people and all of that. Like, it's just, the whole thing gets more fun.
Is this what you would refer to then when we operate in this sort of relaxed state where you said it's a competitive advantage?
I would say there's two ways. And I would bring in the metaphor of like really, really pro athletes here. Because one of the things that will make the difference between, you're the starting guns going off in the Olympics, or it's the last 2 minutes before the buzzer and a tie game and the championship game, that kind of thing. Like, those are moments of pressure, and the athletes that shine and thrive and perform in those moments are people who not only have the skills. It's not like those are irrelevant. They've done their drills. They have the talent. They have the skills. Like the things they're doing, they do matter. But somebody can be a great free throw shooter and then choke under pressure because the fear is too much, and that inner skill set and wisdom and capacity that they've developed can't come out. It's a little bit like that. So, and I would say the way that I understand it as a competitive advantage, like, yes, it could be that a lot of people are operating from fear and stress. And so you getting to be that relaxed athlete, like the fullness of your possibility comes through you in a different way. But I actually have a belief, I can't prove this, but I really have had a lot of experience with it, and a lot of and several different mentors who have been doing this a lot longer than I have, who also have all their own stories around this, that it's not just that, when we're in that relaxed state of presence, we're more chill than everyone else. It's also, we're more receptive to way deeper levels of wisdom and clarity. And I would say that it's almost a spiritual thing, where those flashes of genius, those flashes of inspiration, the passion to have like lucky things happen or people get really drawn to you, those moments that are beyond the rational mind, that are sort of the magic of creativity and discovery and destiny and purpose, those come more often and more clearly when we're in a state of presence than we're in a state of fear. We're receptive to them, we're available to them, we can hear the whispers of genius. I mean, it's similar to like when you're really grinding on a problem and you're just stuck and then you're in the shower and the answer pops in. It's like you get available to those moments vastly more, and you start letting them be part of your business strategy, is listening to something that the rational mind is only one little facet of.
You've shared with us some of the common stories that people kind of repeat in their brains, but how do you help them realize that this is a story so that they actually see it, that, hey, this is not reality, this is just something you've been telling yourself over and over again?
Well, I mean, the first thing is just, it's always just a story. Almost all of it. There's very, very little that we think we're reporting the news around facts and circumstances, but anything other than the most inarguable thing, which is there are four things that I would count as inarguable. One is the body sensations we're having, which most people don't even pay any attention to. The second is the emotion that we're having. Again, often not included in business decisions. The third is the thought we're having or the story we're telling. It's inarguable that the ticker tape just went by and I thought, Allie seems interested in what I'm saying as she's leaning forward. Like, that's the thought I'm having. I could be wrong that you're interested, but the fact that I had that thought, that's inarguable. And then the last one is just like what a camera would see. For example, a simple one is the thermometer says it's 86 degrees. Now, is that hot or not hot? That's subjective. That's arguable. But there's this piece of evidence where like it's neutral and everyone involved could really call it an actual fact. And that's its own whole, I mean, we could get esoteric about that, but we're going to stick with the simple, that pretty much anyone involved in any part of a situation could see it as a fact, or we call that a circumstance, right? And so yes, we have circumstances. Circumstances can be, I brought in X amount of revenue last month. That's a circumstance. But then what it means, anything other than the circumstance, is a story we're telling ourselves. And some stories you can tell different stories about the same data. Any like scientist will tell you that. And so the story that we tell then produces an emotion. And some of those emotions put us more into fear. And some of those emotions help us be more in presence. So if we want to get clever about keeping ourselves in presence, then we get clever about noticing. We're always telling a story. So noticing what it is and then thinking, like getting curious, is there another story I could tell about this that I can find evidence for being equally true? And there usually is if you go look for it and you get a little less attached to your fear about why this one has to be the right one. And even if you just take it on as a creative exercise, how could the opposite, okay, I'm telling this story, how could the opposite be equally true? That is an exercise I do with people a lot. And we can usually find it. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, when I believe this story, who am I being and what gets to happen and what feelings am I creating and where am I moving from? And if I choose this story, then what?
You said that in practicing conscious leadership, it includes radical honesty, obviously, around the hard conversations that we tend to need to have in business. What would you say are the conversations that most leaders are avoiding? And how is that avoidance actually, like, what's it costing them?
I would say that, well, one, for me, consciously, I actually tend to work more with people who have very small teams or are solopreneurs. My mentors are very in conscious leadership, work more with organizational leaders. So I have a lot I could say from their material, but it's a little bit less what I work with people on. But what I want to say is conscious leadership also applies through your whole life, and especially when you run your own business. And sometimes, honestly, the conversations people need to be having, it's whatever they're avoiding. And so it can be leaders and employer relationships. It's often about like performance stuff, or like feeling frustrated or disappointed, or this sense of like, oh, I'm having to do too much for you, or, this isn't really working out, but I'm scared to say it in some way, that kind of thing. But I would just also put in the pot that if there's any conversation that you should be having with your mother, your husband, your son, your sister, your best friend that you're not having, it will be impacting your work, especially as a business owner. It's like all of these, all the withholds all over you, they create kinks in your energy hose, and then your energy isn't flowing. And so it's we're not a different person when we sit down in front of our computer to work with our clients.
I'm hearing you say addressing the conversations obviously are important. How, if I am avoiding it though, if I'm like, this is causing me stress, I know I need to give better feedback, or maybe this person no longer belongs on my team. Like, how do I just kind of confront it so that I stop avoiding it? Because ultimately it's costing me something.
Yes. Well, I think that's part of it, is getting clear on what it's costing you. I think if there's something that's been piling up, then I do think doing the homework of like, what am I getting by not talking about it? Trusting that there is some wisdom in your avoidance. What am I scared of? Who am I blaming? What am I wanting to be right about? Those are the types of, and then asking again, back to those inarguables that I was talking about before. How much can I stick with the inarguables? And there's a little like formula that I have that comes from nonviolent communication, that I've adapted a little bit. Nonviolent communication, but Marshall Rosenberg, it's a whole world, but I have a version of it that I just tweaked a little bit. But it's trying to be as objective as possible about, okay, so when this thing happens, like objectively, a way that you can say it that the other person would probably agree that does happen. I feel, and then really getting like clear with your own feelings and sensations. And then the story, this is where I differ from, if anyone knows traditional nonviolent communication, there's a different next step. But I like to say the story I'm telling myself is that you don't really understand and that you don't care or whatever, and then a very specific request. So would you be willing to blank, blank, blank? So that's kind of a formula or a template. And I'm realizing you and I didn't talk about this ahead of time, and I don't know that I have it available on my website, but I could make it available pretty quickly, as I do have a worksheet that I created for a workshop I taught a little while ago called a difficult conversation prep sheet. And it has a bunch of these questions and that outline to help you kind of get ready, like, what is your intention for the conversation and what am I scared of? And so I can definitely make that available for folks to download and have. So
I would love that. I'll make sure that it comes across the screen, because I know for sure there will be value in individuals who maybe need to have those hard conversations, have been avoiding them, and could use some of your guidance. But you also have a really phenomenal resource where people can continue to learn from you and get maybe some daily tips, right? To tiptoe into the waters of this frame of coaching and thinking. I think you said you have an email. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I send a weekly email, and I also am pretty active on LinkedIn and Instagram, both of which you can find on my website. But I've been sending this weekly email for, 4 or 5 years now. So even since before I was a coach, but as I said, I've been obsessed with these topics for a long time. I used to be more marketing content in there now than there is. Now it's mostly just it's called the Magic Words of the Week. And it's about bringing a tip on a word or a phrase to help you bring more aliveness, sparkle into your life and business. So if these topics are of interest, or if you've, liked my point of view on the world, you can hear from me every week. And as we started with, I was a professional writer before any of this. So I have a lot of raving fans about my newsletter. People say it's the one they actually stay subscribed to. So I'd love to have folks check it out. Yeah. And if you want to just even explore past issues, they're all also up on my website as blog posts, so you can get a taste of it before you commit. But would love to, I'm definitely putting a lot of content out in the world, both through the newsletter and on social media. And the stuff I put on Instagram is different than I put on LinkedIn. So if you want to be a super fan, just constantly creating new resources and opportunities, because really my heart's passion is teaching this stuff and helping more people live more and more from presence and more into their truth and aliveness. There's a stat that the number one regret people have on their deathbeds is that they didn't have the courage to live a life that was true to themselves, and they followed too many other people's expectations. And I'm really on a mission to make sure that doesn't happen. And I think it's not just courage, but also skills.
I do want to ask you about Wild Genius. Where did that name come from? Yeah. Is it inspired from helping us find kind of that genius within us?
Yes. So this idea of the zone of genius is something that my teachers, Gay and Katie Hendricks, teach, and that I've been, people may have read the book, The Big Leap, which is where that zone of genius idea comes from. And I've always just found it interesting. It's that thing that we're so passionate about and great at, that we would do it for fun. And it's where we can make our biggest contribution. And then the wild side of it, I really believe that it's our animal, undomesticated, wild nature that, is also how we get in touch with that. And also, wilderness and the outdoors has been a huge part of my life. There's a reason I was an editor at Backpacker Magazine. And but I'll tell you, I bought that domain name for $900, which is like a lot for a domain name, right? This was not a $15 buy of a domain name. It was a crazy leap of faith on my part. In 2021, which is 4 years before I started the business, because it came to me clearly, and I get lots of different domain name ideas, right? Like most humans, right? And I went and looked it up, and I had an experience I'd never had happen before, where it was just a simple homemade little like website that said, if you want to buy this domain, email this person. Like, it wasn't like a GoDaddy parking lot or anything. And I was just like, I think I need to. And then we negotiated about it. And I just was like, I don't know what I'm going to use this for. It was, I was only a year into my copywriting business. It was 4 years before I got clear I was going to be a coach. But this is like the type of stuff that I'm talking about. I just took the leap of faith that like, yep, I'm supposed to buy this. And then, I've been paying my regular $15 a year ever since. So, the name just was one of those flashes of inspiration that I then had the leap to take action on.
And, some of your work includes helping leaders do exactly what you did. You help individuals just go for it, even when it doesn't all make sense. This is such a beautiful example of you doing it in your own life. So I love that.
There's just a trusting, like I said, the rational is important, and it's the tip of the iceberg. So it's like learning to trust the bigger other signals.
That is great. So then to wrap up, I'd love to just ask you, for that individual who's listening, who probably clearly knows or is feeling something's off, they're maybe running on pressure, they know that something needs to change. What's one thought or piece of advice that you'd want to leave them with about how they can take action this week to change that?
So there's a practice that I'm also working on getting up on my website. And if it's not up there by the time this airs, people should definitely, if they get on my email list, they'll definitely hear about it. But it's a yes in the body practice. And it's just a short little guided audio to help you tune into your yes in the body and start really listening to it. So that is one thing. It's like a muscle. You need to build it. The neural pathways and the self-awareness and the memories. The muscle memory to check in with yourself and your body, even if you don't think of yourself as a very intuitive or embodied person. That is one thing I would say. And just another thing that's a little bit more generic is I would absolutely say that if you want to move towards a life of more meaning and abundance and joy, and you have never meditated, go find a meditation app. There's one I like called The Way, but there's a lot out there. Calm or Headspace or Insight Timer is totally free. Go sit your butt down for 5 minutes a day and do nothing but be with your thoughts. Because all of the skills I'm talking about require the skill of self-awareness and not just doing the thing, but watching yourself do the thing. And it's not very sexy and it's not very fun, but is it a crazy powerful thing. There's a reason so many wisdom traditions, have it at their core.
Rachel, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me out.